The first time I knew something was off, it wasn't because of Emily's constant texting or her late nights away from home. No, it started with our daughters, Lily and Grace, whispering to each other. Those two, who used to tell me every little thing, suddenly had secrets. I noticed it one Saturday morning, overhearing them in their room, their voices so low, like they were protecting something important. My girls, who could never keep a secret, were now making sure I didn't catch a single word. When I walked in, they snapped their heads toward me, eyes wide, and went silent immediately. I laughed it off at the time, thinking maybe they were planning a surprise for me or something harmless, but that was my first mistake, brushing off the small things. Then there was the day Emily came back from her yoga class. She'd been going religiously for weeks, suddenly obsessed with all that finding balance nonsense. But that evening, her hair was styled, makeup was flawless, and she had on a new dress, not exactly the post-yoga look I expected. The girls were acting strange too, giggling like they were in on some joke, sneaking glances at their mom like they knew something I didn't. I didn't say anything that night. I let it slide, tried to ignore the growing unease in my gut. But Emily didn't come to bed. She stayed downstairs, said she had some work to catch up on. That's when I heard her voice, soft, but clear, coming from the living room. I crept down the stairs, torn between curiosity and suspicion, and what I saw hit me like a freight train. Emily was on the phone, her tone low and sweet in a way that made my skin crawl. She wasn't talking to her mom, her sister, or any of the usual people, she was talking to him. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Yeah, the girls are coming with me this time. They love you." My heart was pounding so hard in my chest, I thought she'd hear it. I stood frozen there, hidden in the shadows, listening as she casually mentioned our daughters like it was the most normal thing in the world. She was taking them with her to see some man, her lover, and they knew. Our daughters knew. I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't just betrayal, this was something else entirely, something darker and more twisted than I could have imagined. The woman I had trusted with everything, the mother of my children, wasn't just sneaking around behind my back, she was dragging our girls into it like it was a family outing. I didn't confront her then. I couldn't. I just stood there, paralyzed, trying to process what I'd just heard. My mind was racing, unraveling every moment of our marriage like pulling a thread from a sweater. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to them, to me? I went back upstairs, lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the weight of it all to crush me. But instead, a cold, calculated calm washed over me. This wasn't just about Emily's lies anymore, this was something deeper, and there was no way I was going to let her pull our kids into it. That night, I made up my mind. If she wanted to play games, I was going to play too, but I'd make sure I won. The next morning, everything felt unreal. Emily was in the kitchen, smiling like nothing had happened, pouring cereal for the girls. Lily and Grace were sitting at the table, laughing, talking without a care in the world. Watching them, it felt like I was seeing my life through some twisted filter. The woman I married stood right there in front of me, but I felt like I didn't know her at all. Worse, I didn't know what kind of lies she'd been feeding our daughters. I played along, smiled, kissed Emily on the cheek, went through the motions, but inside I was boiling. Every word I said was deliberate, every movement calculated, like I was an actor in my own life. It took everything I had not to let the anger spill out, but I knew I couldn't let on just yet. I needed more. Emily told me she was taking the girls to a kids' yoga class that day. I nodded, pretended to believe her, but I already knew where they were really going. She wasn't taking them to yoga, she was taking them to see him. That's what hurt the most. She was pulling them into her mess, making them part of her lies, and they were too young to even know what was happening. They were being conditioned to accept this twisted reality she was creating. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of me. I needed to know who this man was. I had to see him with my own eyes. My hands were trembling, but my mind had never been so clear. I grabbed Emily's laptop, determined to find something, anything, that would lead me to him. I know it sounds like something a paranoid lunatic would do, digging through her stuff, but trust had already been shattered beyond repair. Privacy, respect, those were out the window. She'd already destroyed all that. It didn't take long to find what I needed. Turns out, she wasn't as careful as she thought. Buried in her emails was a reservation for lunch with M at some fancy restaurant about an hour from town. He had even sent her a message the night before to confirm the details. "Can't wait to see you and the girls. They're so sweet. I've missed them." I nearly lost it right then. This wasn't some random fling. This guy had been around long enough to know my daughters. He was comfortable with them, and worse yet, they liked him. The idea of another man sitting across from my girls, smiling like he was part of our family, made me sick to my stomach. There was no way I was staying home while my wife paraded my daughters in front of her lover like it was a twisted family outing. I grabbed my keys, jumped in the car, and hit the road. I knew where they'd be, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The restaurant was in one of those quaint little towns where everything looks perfect, couples strolling down the street hand in hand, families enjoying ice cream on the sidewalks. And there, at the far end of the patio, I saw them. Emily was laughing like nothing was wrong, her hand resting on the arm of a man I had never laid eyes on before. He looked about my age, maybe a bit younger, clean-shaven, well-dressed, the type who probably thought he was better than most people. My daughters, Lily and Grace, were sitting on either side of him, chatting away like they'd known him for years. He was smiling at them, offering them bites of dessert, like he was their dad. My pulse roared in my ears. I parked the car and walked slowly toward them, forcing myself to breathe, to stay composed. Each step felt like it stretched on forever, my focus narrowing in on that table, on them, completely unaware that their world was about to come crashing down. I stopped right in front of them, casting a shadow over their little picture-perfect moment. Emily looked up at me, her face instantly losing all color. She didn't even get the chance to say a word before I asked, in a voice that was calm but icy, "Who the hell is this?" The girls went silent, their cheerful conversation halted in an instant. The man shifted uneasily in his seat, clearly not expecting me to show up. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I wasn't about to make this easy for her. "Don't worry, girls," I said, turning to Lily and Grace. "I just need to have a quick talk with Mommy and her friend here. Why don't you head inside and play for a bit?" They hesitated, glancing between me and Emily, but eventually slid off their chairs and headed inside, still confused but obedient. Once they were out of sight, I turned back to Emily and the man she'd been hiding. "So," I said, keeping my voice low, barely keeping my anger in check, "you want to explain this, or should I?" The man stood up, trying to appear calm, like this wasn't a big deal. "I think we should all just sit down and talk," he said. "I don't give a damn what you think," I shot back, my eyes locked on him. "You're sitting at a table with my wife and my daughters. You don't get a say in this." Emily finally found her voice, though it was shaky. "Look, I can explain." "Explain?" I snapped. "You brought our kids into this, Emily. How the hell do you even begin to explain that?" She didn't respond, her eyes darting between me and the man, desperately searching for a way out. But there was no escaping this now. Emily sat there, her hands clenched into tight fists on the table, her eyes darting back and forth between me and her lover, like she was trying to figure out her next move. But no amount of planning was going to get her out of this mess. I wasn't letting her wriggle out of this one. I could see her struggling to find the right words, but I wasn't interested in hearing another word of her lies. As for the guy, he was different. Sure, he looked nervous, but there was this underlying smugness about him, like he wasn't really worried. Like he thought he had the upper hand somehow. Maybe he believed he was better than me, or maybe Emily had filled his head with tales of how miserable she was. Whatever it was, I could see it in the way he stood there, nervous, but still holding steady, like he hadn't just been caught with another man's wife and kids. "Who the hell is he, Emily?" I asked again, louder this time, my eyes locked on him, daring him to speak up. Emily let out a sharp breath before finally saying, "This is David. He's a friend, Jake." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "A friend? That's the best you've got? A friend? So, you're bringing our daughters to lunch with your friend? Lying to me for months, dragging them along, and now you expect me to believe this is some innocent thing?" She shifted in her seat, her expression hardening. This was it. This was where the truth was about to come out, with nowhere left to hide. But instead of owning up to it, instead of even showing a hint of remorse, she did the one thing I didn't see coming, she doubled down. "Jake, stop being so dramatic. The girls like him, okay? He's been good to them. They're happy. I know this is hard for you to hear, but this isn't just about you anymore. It's not what you think. Not what I think." Those 4 words hit me like a punch straight to the gut. How dare she act like I was blowing this out of proportion, like I was the one overreacting to this twisted little scenario she had created. "You've been taking them to see him?" I asked, my voice lowering to a dangerously quiet tone. She didn't flinch. "Yes. And they're fine with it. Honestly, they're happier than they've been in a long time. You've been so wrapped up in your own world, you didn't even notice." That hit me harder than anything. She was flipping this around on me now, making it seem like I'd been neglecting my daughters, and that's why they had accepted this guy so easily. As if I had been too blind to see that she'd been pulling them into her affair right in front of me. I couldn't stop staring at her. This wasn't the Emily I thought I knew. The woman sitting across from me wasn't just a cheater, she was a manipulator, someone who had rewritten the entire narrative in her head to make herself the victim, or at least not the villain. I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, but I wasn't about to lose my cool in front of him. I wasn't going to let David see me unravel. "You really think this is okay?" I asked, my gaze never leaving hers. "You think it's fine to just sweep this under the rug because you think the girls are fine with it?" She crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, her posture defiant now. "They're not just fine with it, Jake. They're happier. Happier than they've been in a long time. They know things haven't been great between us, and... Oh, don't even start with that. Problems? Problems don't give you the right to drag our kids into your mess, Emily. You really think this is a solution?" That's when David finally decided to speak up, like he had something worthwhile to say. "Look, man, I get that you're upset." I snapped my head toward him. "Shut up. You don't get it. You're sitting here acting like some kind of hero. But you're nothing but a coward, hiding behind my wife and kids, playing pretend with someone else's family." His face twitched, but he kept his mouth shut after that. He knew better than to push it any further. Emily was fuming now, her eyes narrowing as she leaned forward, her frustration clear. "You're not helping this situation, Jake. We haven't been happy for years, and you know that. I've tried to talk to you. I've tried to make things work, but you just... I just what, Emily? Worked? Took care of our girls. Tried to hold this family together while you were out playing around with this guy." Her silence said everything I needed to hear. "You could have left. You could have told me you were done, but no, you dragged Lily and Grace into this. You took them along like they were part of this circus you've created. You used them to cover your tracks, and now you want to sit here and act like it's all because we had problems." The weight of my words filled the air, thick with tension. She had no answer, at least not one she was ready to admit out loud. I stood up slowly, the sound of the chair scraping against the concrete loud in the quiet patio. "This isn't over," I said, looking down at her. You think this is just about us? It's not. You've made this about them. You crossed a line, Emily, and there's no going back. I turned and walked away, leaving the both of them sitting there, their little fantasy unraveling. I could hear Emily calling after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The next steps weren't about fixing our marriage, they were about protecting my daughters from the mess their mother had dragged them into. And in that moment, I knew the real battle was just beginning. I drove home with my mind racing, the image of Emily sitting with that man and my daughters burned into my thoughts. The reality of what I had seen was far worse than anything I could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about cheating, Emily had built an entire second life, and worse, she had roped Lily and Grace into it. As the shock of it started to sink in, the anger inside me began to boil over, fierce and unrelenting. When I got home, I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, my mind spinning with what I had to do next. There was no way I could just let this slide, not after everything I'd seen. Emily had involved the girls, and for that, she was going to face the consequences. I didn't know exactly how yet, but one thing was certain, she wasn't walking away from this unscathed. I wanted revenge, but I wasn't about to do something that would destroy me or hurt my daughters. No, I had to be smart about this. If I was going to come out on top, I needed to play this the right way. Hours ticked by, but I couldn't shake the scene from the restaurant. Emily laughing, touching him like I didn't exist, the girls giggling with a stranger, completely unaware of the disaster that was about to hit. The betrayal felt like poison running through my veins, and I couldn't stand sitting with it any longer. When Emily and the girls finally came home, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The girls hurried past me without a word, heading upstairs to their room, blissfully unaware of what had gone down between their parents. But Emily, she stood in the doorway, a mix of frustration and guilt written all over her face. I could see it in her eyes, she knew she couldn't keep lying anymore, not after I had caught her red-handed. She closed the door softly and walked into the living room, crossing her arms defensively. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low, like she was still in control. I stared at her, not moving, barely blinking. "Talk? Now you want to talk?" "Yes, now," she insisted. "What happened today can't keep happening. This mess is tearing everything apart." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. This mess. The audacity she had to call it a mess, like it was some minor inconvenience, something we could just sweep under the rug. "This mess," I said slowly, "is your fault, Emily. You made the choice to cheat. You made the decision to drag our daughters into it. And now you want to talk like we can just fix this? You've completely lost it." Her eyes narrowed. "I wasn't happy, Jake. For years, I haven't been happy. You knew that, but you ignored it. You were always working, and even when you were home, you were distant. You didn't even try to make things better. That's your excuse." I shot back. "Because things were tough, you thought it was okay to sneak around behind my back and introduce our kids to another man?" Her voice rose, defensive and bitter. "I didn't want things to happen like this, okay? But you didn't leave me any choice. I needed someone, and the girls, they needed to see me happy. You're kidding yourself if you think they don't know something's been wrong for a long time." I replied coldly, "You've used our daughters as pawns in your game, Emily, and you're not even sorry." She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "What's worse is that they've been covering for you. They've been lying to me. They're just kids, and you've turned them into liars for your own sake." Her face twisted, but she didn't deny it. Of course she didn't. She knew the girls had been involved, maybe not intentionally, but she had still used them all the same. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to win this argument, to justify what she had done, but deep down, she knew she was wrong. That didn't stop her from trying, though. "You don't get it," she said, her voice trembling now. David's not just some fling. He's been good for the girls. He's good for me. This isn't just about us anymore. They've connected with him, and it wouldn't be fair to take that away from them. I could feel my entire body tighten, my fists clenched at my sides. You think I care about what's fair to him? He's nothing to them, Emily. Nothing. You've messed with their heads, made them believe this is normal. They don't even understand what's going on, and you've thrown them into the middle of your affair like it's some kind of family outing. She blinked, momentarily stunned into silence. For the first time, it seemed like what I was saying was sinking in, cutting through whatever delusion she was living in. But that only lasted a second. Her posture straightened, and her face hardened again. So what now? She snapped, her voice dripping with venom. You want a divorce? Fine. You want to tear everything apart? Go ahead. But don't for a second think you'll get the girls. They're better off with me. You've been so lost in your own world that you didn't even notice how distant they've become from you. You don't know them like I do. I took a step closer, feeling the weight of her threat land like a punch to my chest. She was going to try to take my daughters from me, like she hadn't already done enough damage. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her cheating anymore. She was ready to fight dirty, and if I didn't act fast, she'd use the girls to turn them against me. I'm not letting you win this, Emily, I said, my voice low but steady, filled with the promise of a fight she wasn't ready for. You've already lost everything, but you just don't know it yet. She glared at me, her jaw clenched tight, but she didn't say a word. The tension between us was thick, choking the air around us, as if the whole house was holding its breath. I turned away and headed toward the stairs. We'll talk more tomorrow, I said without looking back. But I'm not letting you drag them down with you. Not a chance. As I climbed the stairs, I heard her exhale sharply, her frustration practically echoing off the walls. She still thought she had the upper hand, that this was just another argument she could win. But she had no clue what was coming next. I wasn't going to let her destroy our family any more than she already had. She made the mistake of pulling our daughters into her mess, and now I was going to make sure she paid for it, one way or another. That night, sleep barely came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's smug face, David's arrogant grin, and my daughters laughing along with a man who had no place in their lives. The weight of it all was suffocating, but beneath that pressure, something else was growing, a plan. I needed to be smart about this. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. Emily had made it clear she was willing to play dirty, to turn Lily and Grace against me, to paint me as the distant, uninvolved father. I couldn't let her win. If I let my anger take over, I'd look irrational, and she'd hold all the cards. No, I had to stay calm, keep my emotions in check, and strike where it would hurt her most, her control. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else, long before Emily or the girls stirred. I headed downstairs and made a pot of coffee, my mind already racing through everything I needed to do. First, I had to gather proof. I knew Emily wasn't careful, and I was banking on that. The email reservations I had found were just the beginning. I was sure there was more. I started with her phone. It was sitting there in the kitchen, plugged in and charging like she didn't think I'd ever go near it. I unlocked it easily, she hadn't even bothered to change the passcode, and I started scrolling, texts, emails, photos. It was all there. Every single conversation with David, every sneaky plan they made to meet up, every nauseating message about how much he loved spending time with our daughters. I took screenshots of everything, sent them to my own email, and erased any trace of the transfer. There were even messages from the girls, simple, innocent texts about how much fun they'd had with Uncle David. The fact that Emily had let them see him that way turned my stomach. She'd woven him into their lives like he was family, and I had no idea how long this had been going on. Once I was done with her phone, I headed upstairs to my home office. I printed everything, all the damning evidence I could find. I was building my case, piece by piece. By the time I finished, I had a thick stack of papers that painted a clear picture of what had been happening right under my nose. But that wasn't enough. I needed leverage, something that would force her to back down and let me take control. Emily didn't just want David, she wanted control of the story. She wanted to spin this so she'd come out looking like the victim, the neglected wife who had to find happiness somewhere else because her husband was too busy, too distant, too preoccupied. I could already see how she'd twist this to the girls, to her friends, and eventually, to the court. But I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't going to let her distort it. The next move was talking to a lawyer. I wasn't ready to file for divorce, not yet, but I needed to know my options. I made the call later that day after Emily had taken the girls to school. I found a lawyer who specialized in high-conflict divorces and custody battles. Her name was Sarah, and she didn't sugarcoat anything. "Your wife has been using your daughters to build a bond with her lover," Sarah said bluntly after I explained the situation. "That's going to be a problem for you in court if you don't act quickly. Judges tend to prioritize stability for the kids, and if your daughters have grown attached to this man, and your wife can prove you've been distant, it's going to be a tough fight." "I'm not distant," I snapped. "She's been lying to them, manipulating them." "I believe you," Sarah said, her voice calm, "but we need more than just your word. Gathering evidence was a good start, but we need to be strategic. If you can prove that Emily's actions are harming the girls, that she's been deceiving them and using them to cover up her affair, you have a chance at custody." The word custody hit me like a ton of bricks. That's what this was really about, my daughters. It wasn't just about proving Emily wrong, it was about making sure she didn't take them from me. "Do you have proof she's been taking them to see him without your knowledge?" Sarah asked. "I've got texts, emails, reservations, photos, everything," I replied. "That's good. It's a solid start, but you need to get the girls back on your side. Don't confront them directly, don't make them part of your fight with Emily, but show them that you're here for them, that you're the stable parent. You need to rebuild that bond before she turns them completely against you." I thanked her, set up a follow-up meeting, and hung up the phone. Sarah's advice echoed in my mind, don't put the girls in the middle. It was solid advice, but it was going to be harder to follow than it sounded. Emily had already dragged them into this mess, and now it was up to me to pull them back out. That evening, I put my plan into motion. Emily was out, probably with David again, so I had the house to myself with Lily and Grace. We ordered pizza, watched a few movies, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I was just there, present with my daughters. I wasn't distracted by work or Emily or anything else. It was just me and them. As we sat on the couch, Lily rested her head on my shoulder. "Dad, can we go to the park tomorrow? Just the three of us?" That question hit me harder than anything Emily had said. It seemed so simple, but it felt like a lifeline. Lily didn't want David, she wanted me. Chloe, sitting on my other side, nodded eagerly in agreement. "Yeah, just us, like before." I smiled, swallowing back the emotions threatening to choke me. Of course. Just us. Later that night, I tucked them into bed, kissed them goodnight, and stood in the hallway for a long while, thinking about everything. Emily might have gotten close to them through her lies, but I wasn't going to let her rewrite our family's story. I had a chance, and I was going to take it. When Emily finally came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. She looked surprised to see me there, a glass of water in front of me, the pile of evidence hidden away for now. She paused in the doorway, her eyes narrowing slightly as she tried to figure out what I was thinking. "Long night?" I asked casually, not looking up from my glass. She shrugged, walking past me. "Just catching up with some friends." "Right," I said, nodding, letting the lie hang between us. I didn't push her on it. I didn't need to, not yet. "I think we need to have a real conversation," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. About the girls. About where all of this is going. She sighed, walking over to the counter to pour herself a glass of wine. Jake, we've been over this. I don't want to keep having the same argument. We won't, I replied, leaning back in my chair. Because the next time we talk, it'll be with lawyers. This isn't going to end the way you think, Emily. She turned slowly, her eyes narrowing, a mix of fear and defiance flashing across her face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I know everything, I said, my voice dropping lower. I know about you, about David, and about what you've been doing with the girls. She froze, the wineglass halfway to her lips. I'm done playing your game, Emily, I continued. You've lied, you've cheated, and you've pulled our daughters into it. You think you're in control. You're not. Not anymore. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the glass down on the counter. You wouldn't. I stood up, locking eyes with her. Try me. Her face twisted with fury, but behind it, I could see the cracks forming. She wasn't nearly as confident as she had been at the restaurant. Now, she realized I wasn't backing down. You have no idea what you're starting, Jake, she spat, her voice low and venomous. No, I said, stepping closer to her, my voice steady. I know exactly what I'm finishing. The next morning felt different. There was a tension in the air, thick, almost like the calm before a storm. Emily didn't say a word to me when she got up. She moved around the kitchen, avoiding me, acting like I wasn't even there. Her usual morning chatter with the girls was muted, and even Lily and Grace seemed to sense something was off. I wasn't about to let her cold silence get to me. I had made my move, and now I was waiting for her next one. She thought she could manipulate her way through this, just like she always had, but this time, I was ready. This time, I was already ahead of her. As I watched the girls eat breakfast, their innocent smiles lighting up the room, I felt the weight of what was coming next. I didn't want to tear their world apart, but Emily had forced my hand. If I didn't fight back, she would keep dragging them deeper into her web of lies. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. After Emily dropped the girls off at school, I sat down at the dining room table and called Sarah, my lawyer. I filled her in on everything that had happened the night before, the threat I'd made, the cold wall of silence that now stood between us. Good, Sarah said, her voice sharp and focused. You need to stay strong. Don't let her intimidate you, and whatever you do, don't lose your temper. She's going to try to push you into a reaction she can use against you in court. Keep everything documented, and don't give her anything to work with. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. What's the next step? You've got solid evidence, emails, texts, proof that she's been taking the girls to see her lover behind your back. That's a strong foundation. We're going to file for temporary custody. If we can show the court that she's been putting the children in a compromising situation, you'll have a good shot at getting them out of her care, at least for now. My stomach tightened at the thought. Temporary custody. That meant the girls would be with me full-time, and Emily would be the one fighting to see them. Part of me wanted that, needed that, because I couldn't stand the idea of her manipulating them any further. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the good times we once had, felt the weight of what this would mean for them. It wasn't just about me and Emily anymore. It never was. Sarah, I said, my voice calm but firm, let's do it. The fight for my daughters had officially begun. I hung up the phone with Sarah, the reality of what was coming hitting me hard. Filing for custody wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was a declaration of war against the woman I had once loved. I knew Emily wasn't going to let this slide. She had been testing the boundaries, seeing how far she could push me. Now that she knew I wasn't backing down, she was going to push even harder. This wasn't just about the girls anymore, it was about control. Later that afternoon, I went to pick up the girls from school. Chloe, as usual, came running toward me with all her energy, while Lily walked slower, her brow furrowed, a clear sign that questions had been brewing since the restaurant. She was too sharp for her own good, and I could see the confusion in her eyes, the growing realization that something wasn't right between her mother and me. I didn't know how much longer I could keep shielding her from the truth, but for now, all I could do was be there for them. We spent the rest of the evening in our own little world, just the three of us. I made dinner, they helped set the table, and for a few hours, we pretended like things hadn't changed. But deep down, I knew they had. No matter how much I tried to keep the chaos Emily had stirred up out of their lives, it was only a matter of time before it spilled over. When Emily finally came home that night, the atmosphere shifted like a sudden gust of wind. The girls ran to her, hugging her like nothing was wrong, but I caught the tightness in her smile as she greeted them. She didn't look my way, didn't acknowledge me at all, and that was fine by me. There was nothing left to say until the legal papers were in her hands. After the girls were tucked into bed, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in front of her. She glanced up as I walked in, her eyes cold, distant. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice even. She didn't respond right away, just stared at her glass before finally speaking. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" "I am," I replied. "This has gone on long enough. You brought the girls into this mess, and I'm not going to just stand by and let it keep happening." Her face hardened, her jaw tight. "You think you can just take them away from me? You think you can stroll in here and play the hero after everything?" "I'm not trying to be the hero," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I'm trying to protect them. You're the one who brought a stranger into their lives and made them part of your affair. This is on you, Emily." Her eyes flared with anger, but she kept her voice low, controlled. "You think they haven't noticed? You think they don't see how distant you've been? Wrapped up in your work, barely there. And now you're trying to act like you care." "I care," I snapped, "more than you know. That's why I'm doing this. They deserve better than this circus you've turned our family into." Emily shot up from her chair, her face inches from mine, her voice shaking with anger. "You're not going to win this, Jake. You may think you've got it all figured out, but you don't know what you're up against. You have no idea how far I'm willing to go to keep my daughters." I stared back at her, feeling the cold fury rising inside me. "I'm not afraid of you, Emily. You've already lost, and the sooner you accept that, the better it'll be for everyone." Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, fuming. I knew she wouldn't give up without a fight, but I was ready for it. She'd pushed me past my limit, and there was no turning back now. The next few days went by in a blur. I met with Sarah multiple times, getting everything lined up for the custody hearing. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered was carefully organized, and I replayed every conversation with Emily in my head, trying to anticipate her next move. The tension at home was unbearable, with Emily and I barely exchanging words, every interaction dripping with unspoken hostility. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. I dressed carefully that morning, the gravity of the situation weighing heavy on my shoulders. This wasn't just about proving Emily wrong or winning in court. This was about my daughters, their future, their safety. Losing wasn't an option. When I got to the courthouse, Sarah was already there, waiting for me. She gave me a reassuring nod as I approached, but I could see the tension in her eyes. This wasn't going to be easy, and we both knew it. Emily arrived shortly after, looking every bit the composed picture she wanted to project. Her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman radiating confidence, was right beside her. I had no doubt Emily had chosen her carefully, and I knew she was prepared to go to any lengths to fight dirty if she had to. We stepped into the courtroom, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. As we took our seats, I caught a glimpse of Emily's face, cold, determined, but with a flicker of fear just beneath the surface. She knew what was at stake just as much as I did. The hearing began with the usual formalities, but as soon as Sarah laid out the evidence, the tension in the room shifted. Sarah was sharp, laying out the facts with precision. The emails, the texts, the photos, it was all there, undeniable proof of Emily's betrayal and her dragging the girls into her affair. When Emily took the stand, her lawyer did everything to paint her as the victim, the devoted mother who was simply trying to find happiness in a struggling marriage. But the evidence was clear, and I could see the cracks in Emily's story starting to form. Finally, it was my turn. I took a deep breath and walked to the stand, the weight of my words pressing on me before I even spoke. I wasn't just telling my side of the story, I was fighting for my daughters, for their future. I've done everything I can to be a good father, I began, my voice steady but full of emotion. But my wife, she's made choices that have hurt our family, choices that have put our daughters in the middle of something they never should have been a part of. I'm not trying to take them away from her, I just want to protect them. As I spoke, I glanced over at Emily. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes, the realization that she might actually lose. But I didn't let it shake me. I kept my focus on the judge, on the truth, and most importantly, on my daughters. When I finished speaking, the room fell into a heavy silence. The judge glanced between Emily and me, his face giving nothing away as he weighed everything he'd heard. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. "This is a challenging case," he began, his voice calm and deliberate. "But the welfare of the children must be the priority. Based on the evidence provided, I am granting temporary custody to the father." My heart raced as his words sank in. I had done it. I had won. But it didn't feel like victory, just an overwhelming sense of relief. Emily's face went pale, her hands trembling as she stood, her lawyer whispering rapidly in her ear. I knew this wasn't the end, not by a long shot. But for now, I had what mattered most, my daughters. As I left the courthouse, I was hit with a strange mix of emotions, relief, exhaustion, and a nagging sense of unease. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had a real chance to shield my girls from the chaos Emily had created. And for now, that was enough. When I picked the girls up from school that afternoon, they had no idea what had just happened, no clue how close their world had come to unraveling. I pulled them into a tight hug, feeling the weight of everything I'd fought for, and for the first time in a long while, I had hoped that we were going to be okay. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was determined. I wasn't going to let Emily drag my daughters into her mess again. The storm might have passed for now, but I knew deep down it was only temporary. Emily wouldn't give up so easily, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. But at that moment, my focus was on the girls. They were my priority. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, it felt like the first normal moment we'd had in a while. Lily and Chloe chatted about their day at school, their laughter filling the room. It was such a simple thing, but after everything, it made all the struggles worth it. After dinner, I tucked them into bed. Chloe, always the first to fall asleep, was already half dozing by the time I kissed her goodnight. But Lily was quieter than usual. She lingered as I sat on the edge of her bed, her eyes thoughtful and filled with questions. "Dad?" she asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Yeah, sweetheart," I replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Are things going to be different now? Between you and Mommy?" Her question hit me harder than I'd expected. I knew I couldn't shield her from the truth forever, but I also didn't want to overwhelm her with the messy details of what was happening. I took a deep breath and gave her the best answer I could. "Things might change for a while," I said gently, "but no matter what, you and Chloe are what matter most. I'll always be here for you." She nodded, her eyes drifting to the ceiling. "I just want us to be happy again." "I know, sweetheart." "I do too," I whispered, my throat tightening as I kissed her forehead. I stayed with her until her breathing slowed, and she finally drifted off to sleep. When I left her room, I stood in the hallway for a long while, letting her words sink in. She was so young, but she understood more than I wanted her to. The innocence I had tried so hard to protect had been shattered by the chaos Emily brought into our lives, and I hated her for that. I went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of legal papers Sarah had given me earlier. The fight wasn't over, temporary custody was just that, temporary. Emily was going to fight back, and I knew she'd do whatever it took to win. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. Emily hadn't been home since the court hearing. She hadn't even called to check on the girls. Part of me was relieved I didn't have to deal with her, but another part of me was anxious about what her silence meant. She wasn't the type to back down quietly, and I knew she was out there, plotting her next move. The next morning, as I was getting the girls ready for school, the doorbell rang. A familiar tension tightened in my chest as I walked to the door. I knew exactly who it was. Emily stood on the porch, arms crossed, her expression cold and hard. She was dressed to perfection, as if she had just come from some important meeting, but the tightness in her jaw told me she wasn't here for anything pleasant. "I want to see the girls," she said flatly, skipping any greeting. "Now's not a good time," I replied, keeping my voice calm and controlled. Her eyes narrowed. "They're my daughters, Jake. I have a right to see them." "I'm not stopping you from seeing them," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "But I'm not going to let you walk in here and disrupt their morning because you feel like it. We've got a court order for a reason." Her face twisted with anger, and she stepped closer. "Don't you dare use that against me. You think you're the better parent just because you won a temporary custody hearing? This isn't over, Jake. I'll get them back, and when I do, you'll regret ever trying to take them from me." I met her gaze, feeling the familiar surge of anger building up inside me, but I kept my cool. "You need to calm down, Emily. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about what's best for the girls. Right now, they need stability. They need time to adjust." "Adjust to what?" she snapped. "To you turning them against me?" I sighed, fighting to keep my patience. "I haven't said a single bad word about you, Emily. I'm not going to drag them into this any more than you already have. But you need to think about what you're doing. The more you push, the harder this is going to be for them." Her eyes flared with frustration, but she didn't respond. Instead, she spun on her heel and stormed back to her car, slamming the door so hard I could feel the vibration. I watched her speed away, my heart pounding in my chest. That was the Emily I knew, the Emily who would plow through anything in her way to get what she wanted. And I had no doubt she wasn't done fighting. Later that day, I met with Sarah to map out our next steps. We were gearing up for the upcoming custody review, and I knew Emily would challenge everything she could to claw back control. "She's not going to let this go easily," I told Sarah, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "She'll throw everything she has at this." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "I expected as much. We just need to stay focused and keep building your case. The more stability you can show in your home life, the better your chances of keeping custody." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. I just don't want this dragging on forever. The girls, they're already starting to feel the strain. "I know," Sarah said softly. "But you're doing the right thing. Keep showing up for them. Make sure they know you're their rock, no matter what." When I left her office that day, I felt a strange mix of determination and dread. I knew what was coming, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this fight going without it tearing me apart. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's visits became unpredictable. Some days, she'd show up unannounced, demanding to see the girls. Other times, she'd disappear for days without a call or text. It felt like a power game, like she was trying to assert control however she could. The girls started to notice, especially Lily. She asked more questions, her face filled with worry. Chloe, still too young to fully grasp what was happening, stayed blissfully unaware for the most part, but even she could sense that something was wrong. One evening, after another tense visit from Emily, Lily came to me while I was cleaning up the kitchen. She stood in the doorway, her expression serious. "Dad?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, sweetie," I replied, turning to face her. She hesitated for a moment, then looked down at her feet. "Why doesn't Mommy stay with us anymore?" Her question hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been dreading this moment, but I knew I couldn't keep dodging the truth. I knelt down in front of her, trying to find the right words. "Mommy and we're not getting along right now," I said gently. "And sometimes, when grown-ups aren't seeing eye to eye, they need a little time apart to figure things out." Lily's eyes clouded with uncertainty. "Are you and Mommy ever going to be happy again?" I sighed, feeling the weight of her question. I didn't want to lie to her, but I also didn't want to take away her hope. "I don't know, sweetheart. But no matter what happens, you and Chloe are the most important things in the world to me. I'll always be here for you." She nodded slowly, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She wanted things to go back to how they used to be, and I couldn't blame her for that. I wanted the same, but I knew it was impossible now. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized this fight wasn't just about winning custody or getting through legal battles. It was about protecting my daughters from the fallout of a broken family, from the chaos Emily had brought into our lives. I couldn't fix what had been shattered, but I could make sure they had at least one parent they could depend on. The weeks blurred into months, and the custody review crept closer. I had done everything I could to create a stable, loving environment for the girls, but I knew Emily wasn't going to make it easy. Each visit, each exchange was a reminder that she was still fighting, still determined to take back control. The night before the custody review, sleep was impossible. My mind kept circling through every argument, every heated conversation with Emily, every moment when it felt like I was losing my grip on the situation. The fear of what might happen in court gnawed at me, but I had to push it aside. I had to stay focused. When the day of the review finally came, I put on the same suit I had worn to the first hearing. I stared at myself in the mirror, feeling the weight of what was at stake. This was it. The final battle. At the courthouse, Sarah greeted me with a reassuring smile, but I could see the tension behind her eyes. Emily was already there, her lawyer standing by her side. She looked calm, composed, like she had it all together, but I knew her better than that. Beneath that facade, she was just as nervous as I was. The review began, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Both sides laid everything out, dissecting every piece of our lives for the court to scrutinize. I spoke about how much I loved Lily and Chloe, about the stable, loving home I had built for them, and how crucial it was to keep them safe from the chaos Emily had dragged into their world. As expected, Emily fought back. Her lawyer painted her as a loving mother who had simply made a mistake, someone who deserved a second chance. But the facts were undeniable. Emily had crossed too many lines. She had involved the girls in her affair, and I wasn't about to let her walk away from that without consequences. When the judge finally delivered his ruling, my heart felt like it was pounding in my throat. The room was silent, each word from his mouth hanging in the air, heavy with meaning. Based on the evidence presented, full custody is awarded to the father, the judge declared, his voice steady. The mother will have supervised visitation, pending further review. The words hit me like a wave. Full custody. I had one. Emily gasped sharply, her face turning pale as she stared at the judge, wide-eyed in disbelief. I could see the anger bubbling beneath her shock, but there was nothing she could do now. The decision had been made. As I walked out of that courthouse, a huge sense of relief washed over me. It was finally over. The fight had been long and brutal, but I had done what I needed to do. I had protected my daughters. When I picked up Lily and Chloe from school later that day, they were blissfully unaware of just how close they had come to being pulled deeper into the mess their mother had created. I hugged them tightly, feeling the weight of months of stress lift from my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had hope. We could finally start to heal, to rebuild the life that had been torn apart. We had made it through the storm, and now, we could begin again.